Hey everybody, today I'm going to be doing another one of these videos where I do a bunch of these doodles with gouache, and these are very similar in style and in color to the ones that I did I think 2 videos ago, if I remember correctly. So I hope you like this sort of style. Here I started with a bunch of sketches first. If you do something that's a bit more intricate like this, I totally recommend starting with sketches. Sometimes I just head right into my paintings and don't do any sketches, especially with gouache. Sometimes I just don't feel like doing a sketch, but with these types of drawings or paintings, I recommend taking your time with the sketch. Here you can see all of the sketches together, and then I colored or painted all of those in. So the painting process is almost like a more advanced coloring book because I already have all of the main sketches done. And here I try to keep to a consistent color scheme so that everything sort of goes together and it's not too overbearing. I recommend picking either a limited color palette like I did here. You will see all of the colors that I used, or go somewhat in a rainbow order. It's also something that I've done in the past where I wanted to use all of the colors, but if you go more in a rainbow order, it's gonna look really pretty because all of the colors that are next to each other really go well together, and it's just very pleasing to look at. And if you don't want to do a rainbow order, then I recommend picking maybe a maximum of 4 colors, main colors to choose from. So here I was using this turquoise blue. It's a bit more towards the blue, I would say. And I was using a lighter version of that and a darker version of that. So I'm counting that basically as one color. You can see with the legs of this lantern and then this ring that you can hold it on. And also with the candle that I did at first, I also have a bit of a color variation. So I played around a little bit with gradients and with different variations of the same color. And obviously, all of those colors will go together if I just have a darker and a lighter version. And to mix a lighter version of a color with gouache, I usually just add some white. So that's gonna make a lighter and a more pastel version of it. And then for a darker version, I mix in a little bit of black, but that's gonna take out some of the saturation. So I often just mix a new version of the color. So for example, with this turquoise blue, with the darker version, I just mixed in more of the blue itself, maybe even a little bit of a purple. So it's not really as turquoise anymore. It's a little bit more blue, but I just used darker colors in my mix. And then for the mid-tone sort of, I have a bunch more white in it, not as much as with the lightest tone, but you know, there's a little bit of a variation. With the darkest colors, I don't mix in any white or almost no white, and then a little bit with the mid-tones, and then a lot more with the highlights. So that way I can get a good color variation, and that's just gonna make the piece a lot more interesting. Of course, you can keep it as simple as you want. You can do any of these with just one flat color. I think they would still look cool. It's just gonna be a little bit of a different style, but you could also go into a bit more detail like I did here. And I was using my nail art brush here. I know some people get upset that I use a nail art brush for painting, but honestly, I don't know why, because it works just fine. It's extremely cheap. I think a pack of 5 costs like €5. I am going to link it in the description box below if I can find it. I think they're available on the US Amazon as well. And often that means that they're available in other places too. But I'm pretty sure you can find similar or maybe even better nail art brushes on a lot of websites and in a lot of stores. And the thing with those is that they have this tiny tip that they come to, because if you're supposed to use it for nail art, then it has to be a very small size. And so for these intricate tiny paintings, I really like them. I don't know why I'm promoting this brush so much, but I used it in these past videos where I did these tiny things. And so in case you're wondering, I don't think it lasts particularly long now that I've used it for a few months. For a lot of these paintings, it's starting to frizzle out a little bit. It doesn't come to as much of a fine point anymore. Unfortunately, that's something that I have with all of my brushes. So I have recommendations for pretty much all types of products that I use, where I definitely have favorites. But then with brushes, it's always hard to recommend really good ones, because all of them, if I use them a lot, they just don't come to a nice point anymore. So if you have any recommendations, maybe there is something that I can do to the brushes to make them come to a fine point again. I have tried even to cut them very gently with scissors, and sometimes that helps, but it's not the best thing to do, honestly, because you make the brush smaller, obviously, when you cut something off. I have seen videos where they put some type of gel on them, but I don't know how well that works. Maybe there's also brushes that can withstand gouache over a long period of time. So let me know if you have any suggestions for that, because I always get really, really good suggestions for papers and fixatives and paints. But the brushes are really something where I'm still looking for a good solution. So for now, we're using this nail art brush. And the downside was that this video was absolutely a nightmare to edit for me, because I dipped that into the paint so often. And if you time-lapse that, especially when I'm painting on the left side of the page, when I'm always dipping into the paint or into the water and I time-lapse that, it looks so terrible when my hand is going all over the screen really quickly. It's really hard to watch, I think. I mean, I know a lot of people don't mind, but personally, I just couldn't leave it as that, and I edited all of that out. And so this is why this video is coming on Friday instead of Thursday. But yeah, you can see the first lantern is done and the first candle is done, and now I am doing a pink one. I would say it is pink. It is a very cool pink tone, so it's almost going into a magenta, but it is still in the pink range, definitely. And so those are kind of the colors that I picked. I have my orange, my blue and turquoise color, and then I have my pink, and then I also did purple tones. And all of these are kind of in the same range and go together really nicely. So I really enjoy what they look like together. And yeah, I did add a lot of details to these. I really took my time with these. And if you want to recreate some of them, you don't have to do the entire page if that's too much. I don't know. I think it took me 4 hours to do all of these. I think that includes the entire process. So if you want to do this, then you can expect 4 hours if you want to add the same amount of detail that I did. But if you don't want to spend 4 hours with this, you can either do these very simplified, like I said, maybe less gradients and tiny little details, or you could just pick a few of those and maybe just do the lantern or just do a candle or two, because then it's gonna be a much quicker process, obviously, and then you can still add a lot of details to the things you picked. By the way, if these videos are a little bit too fast-paced for you and you want to paint along step by step in real time, then I recommend checking out the Cozy Creators Collective, my online art membership. There is a free 7-day trial, so you can join for free to confirm that the membership is the right fit for you. We have live sessions every other week, and then on the alternating week, there's pre-recorded real-time classes. So there is already 7 of those in the membership. So if you join now, you get immediate access to all of this. And on Saturday, so tomorrow, July 20th, there is going to be the next live session, and the theme is going to be birds and feathers. So we're going to paint a bird together, and I am providing a sketch layer if you want to paint along and color in the same as me, the same piece. You can also do your own painting, paint your own bird, your own interpretation of the theme if you're a more advanced artist and are just looking for some company, and then you can do the painting that you want to do while I am just creating something else. Or like I said, you can also follow along if you're more of a beginner artist. And the session is of course going to be recorded as well. I'm just recording my process. So during the call, you might be able to see other people. It depends on whether you want to turn on your camera or not. It's not mandatory. You can, if you want to, show your face or your painting, but I do not record these things. I only record my own process. So you don't have to be scared to join the call. You don't have to say anything if you're there, and you don't have to share anything. But if you want to, you can. There is a chat in the beginning and in the end. Mostly the chats happen at the end of the session. In the beginning, it's more of a just coming together and waiting a few minutes for people to arrive. And then at the end, when we're done with our painting, also depending on how long the painting took and how late it is, then we have a chat and we talk about all things art. We talk about languages and animals and whatever comes up. So if you wanna join these cozy hangout sessions, I highly recommend trying to be live for them, because the chats aren't there in the recording. But obviously, if you can't be there live, I know there's different schedules and time zones and all these things. These calls happen at 4 p.m. Central European time. And for some people, that's the middle of the night. So I totally get if you can't be there. But if you can, I would love to see you and chat with you. And I will leave links to all of that in the description box below. And like I said, there's live sessions every other week. So if you miss that one, maybe you can catch the next one. And I might also try different times in the future. I don't know yet. So far, I found that this is the best time for me as well, because I can't do it too late in the day for me, because after the call I am exporting, editing and uploading the recording, and that takes several hours, and it would take well into the night if the call was too late. So that's the reason why I don't do it later. But we will see. I am probably going to do a poll and just ask people what their preferred time is in the future. So yeah, all of that to say, try out the membership. Like, there's nothing to lose. If you don't add a payment method, then it's just gonna run out after 7 days. There's no strings attached. It's not gonna be a thing that you can't get out of anymore. And even if you sign up, you can still cancel monthly. So I don't think that I even have a yearly plan right now. I'd have to check that. But of course, try it out, see if you like it, and then I hope you do, and I hope you can stay. But I am not forcing you to do that. So you can see with the painting that we're doing here that I am starting to hop over the painting a little bit. At first I wanted to finish the individual things before starting the next one, because it looks so satisfying when you watch it to see one after another appear. But it is a lot more useful to hop all over the page, because this way I am using the same colors in different sections, so kind of spreading around my color. And if I have a purple color, for example, with the candles and the stuff that I did in purple, the little cauldron, then I can just put that into several places quickly because I already have it on my brush. And then I can let that dry. And then when that is dry, I can come back and add more layers. With gouache, I think it dries fairly quickly, especially compared to watercolors. But it is still useful to kind of go back and forth a little bit, just because you cut out all of the waiting time, the time that it takes for all of the paint to dry. I also here and there used my somewhat bigger brush. It was a Stettler, I don't know what size it is. I want to say size 6 or 8, like a synthetic round brush. And I just used that to put some paint into the areas. And then for the little details and for spreading around that paint nicely, I used the tiny brush. So I always recommend using the brushes that feel most comfortable for you, because the sizes really vary from brand to brand. I have a size 10 that is a lot smaller than a size 2 that I have, which makes no sense. Like, the brush sizes absolutely make no sense at all. And it really depends what brand it is, honestly. By the way, I also just recently recorded and uploaded a new podcast episode. My members already got early access to that. And the episode is about ugly art, why you have to create ugly art, why ugly art is not a bad thing. So I highly recommend checking that out if that's a topic. And probably it is a topic for most artists, let's be real. I think we've all been discouraged at some point because our art didn't turn out the way that we wanted it to, and we just didn't like it. I would say it's probably a universal thing for artists. I don't know if there is special artists that don't have that, or people who are extremely unaware. I mean, there's people who are extremely unreflective and they never doubt themselves. And usually those are the people that should sometimes doubt themselves. Let's be honest. There's people who have too much confidence. So that's the episode is not for them. It's for us who often question the stuff we do, even though we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. And all about this topic of what it even means to create ugly art and why I think that it is an essential part of creating. And also I talk about the fact that art YouTubers especially and artists online will mainly share their good art and their pretty art and not the ugliest stuff and the ugly doodles and sketches, and why I think that is a good thing. But I also understand that it is a bit of a double-edged sword because it paints the picture that all of their art is good. But all of these things I talk about in the podcast episode, and the podcast is currently just on YouTube. It is no longer on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all of these places. It used to be, but at some point when I didn't upload an episode for 2 years, I decided that it wasn't worth paying for that because you have to pay to get your podcast on these platforms. I was really shocked when I found that out, actually. I thought Spotify would pay me to have a podcast. But no, I have to pay them. I have to pay for a host. I mean, you're not paying Spotify or any of the platforms specifically. You have to pay for a host platform that then distributes the podcast to those channels and platforms. It is really weird. I was a bit shocked when I found that out. I think if you don't have a podcast, you don't know that. But it's just not worth it right now. It's not extremely expensive, but at the same time, the podcast is something that I do on the side just for fun, and it is definitely not something that is monetized in any way. There's no sponsorships or anything. It's just something that where I share my additional thoughts that don't really fit into YouTube videos, but that I still think are topics that are valuable to talk about. That's what the podcast is for at the moment. And so I've got a few questions about why you can't find it on these platforms anymore. That's why it's only on the podcast YouTube channel right now. I do add visuals to those videos because it is on YouTube. At the moment, I'm just adding visuals from old painting videos, so you can see a bunch of paintings happening while I talk about these topics, and the talking doesn't really reference the painting, but it's just something to look at while it's going on. But you don't have to specifically look at it. You can just play it in the background because the visuals don't really, they're not tied to the audio, if that makes any sense. So if that sounds interesting to you, I will link the podcast in the description box below, and maybe it's gonna be useful for you. And like I said, the members of my collective get early access to these, so yeah, that's just another perk that is in the membership. And there's also reference pictures, and I will probably do more coloring pages as well. There's a bunch of stuff, so check out the Cozy Creators Collective for sure. Here I am right now doing all of the little finishing touches. I wanted to do some gradients here on these. I thought that they looked a little bit too flat compared to the other objects. So all of the purple things this candle here, then the candles with the cauldron. I did a bit more of a variation here with some lighter colors, and then I blended that out a little bit. You can see it dries completely differently with gouache, so it looks a lot more smooth when it is dry. And here is the finished painting. I really hope that you enjoyed this. If you did so, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!